Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our virtual speaker series. Thank you for joining us. My name is Michelle Diaz, and I am the Education Program Manager at Trees Atlanta. Our agenda for today will be this welcoming and introduction first, and then our speaker will be doing the presentation, and she'll be answering questions through the presentation as well. Trees Atlanta mission is to improve Atlanta's urban forest by planting, conservation, and education. We host education events year-round, and during these times, we're doing them virtually. So we hope you can join us for more events after this. If you have any questions through the presentation, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A tool to direct questions to the speaker. I'll be the moderator, and I'll be sharing questions with her throughout the presentation. After this event, you will be receiving a survey email. We would like to know your feedback on the format and the content of the presentation. Please send us any ideas or more topics that you would like to learn about. And this virtual education is still pretty new for us, so we'd love to know how we can do it better. I would like to invite you to check out this upcoming event, the Tree Keeper Training, starting on July 25th. It is a 7-session training, and it will be a combination of virtual and outdoor classes. It will be 9 a.m. to 12. And you can visit treesatlanta.org/calendar for a list of full events that we'll be offering. Also, check out and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And our speaker today is Lillie Kline. Lillie is part of our Urban Forestry Crew team, and she'll be talking today, doing her presentation. And as I mentioned before, feel free to send any questions through the chat and the Q&A, and I'll be sharing it with her. Thank you, Lillie, for joining us today.
Thanks,
and
Michelle.
Enjoy it, everybody.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Lillie. Michelle, thank you so much for the introduction. I wanted to bring in one of my own native plants to join me for the talk. So this is my rattlesnake master. You'll see a picture of it. And I will share my screen with you right now. All right. All right, is that good? Does it look good, Michelle?
Yes, very good.
Okay, perfect. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about the wildlife of the Arboretum. So I'm part of the Urban Forestry Crew. So what I do is I spend a lot of time out on the BeltLine maintaining our plantings. And while I'm out there, it's just been really exciting to really see how much wildlife we have in such an urban area, just through all of these plantings that we've done. And if you were wondering what plants were in the picture, these are the plants. You can see the rattlesnake master that I have next to me. It's like my favorite plant. And throughout the presentation, I am gonna try to have labels on a lot of the plants in here so you won't have to wonder. Also, please feel free to ask questions throughout the talk. If you have a question, you can ask it in the chat, and Michelle will let me know. And we'll have lots of time for questions at the end. Okay, so this is me. I'm Lillie Kline. I'm part of the Urban Forestry Crew. And Michelle mentioned our mission, but again, Trees Atlanta's mission is to protect and improve our urban forest, and we do that through planting, conserving, and educating. Okay, so gonna need a little bit of class participation. I know that we can't do any raised hands here, but I would just love to hear in the chat a few answers of why you all think that wildlife is important. And then I think I can pull up the chat, or maybe Michelle, you can read me some of those answers.
Sure, I will.
Okay. Have we gotten any answers?
Provides habitat.
That's a great one. Absolutely. Any more?
That's it for now.
Okay. All right. No worries. Yeah. So
And
absolutely.
provides food sources as well.
Yes, wildlife can definitely provide food sources for other wildlife. They can provide food sources for us, I suppose. So, and I will say that most of the pictures throughout this presentation are pictures that I took on the BeltLine. The exception is the pictures of birds, because birds are fast and far away, and my phone camera is not that good. But a few reasons that wildlife is important is that, you know, they act as pest control for us. That's a really big one. And so if you look in the top right, this is a Japanese beetle and it's invasive. And so we do have you know, we have a number of pests around here that need controlling. Mosquitoes are another great one. On the bottom right, we have a carpenter bee on mountain mint. So for pollination, that's really important. In the top left, we have a mockingbird on a holly. And so mockingbirds are important seed dispersers. Wildlife provides a lot of economic value. And so if you think about ecotourism, that's a big one. If you think about pest control in farms, that's a big one. But also just on the BeltLine, you know, these beautiful plantings are increasing the amount of people who are coming to the BeltLine. You know, businesses are coming in, people are you know, making a living along the BeltLine. And then in the bottom left is okay, I wrote this down. It's a red-legged Buprestis beetle. And I just think that it's so beautiful. It was so cool. I had never seen anything like it before. And, you know, intrinsic value and beauty is another really important reason for wildlife, in my opinion. Okay, so what kinds of wildlife can we see on the BeltLine? Well, we can see birds. I didn't take this picture, again, because birds are fast, but I have seen the goldfinches eat the seeds out of lots of our plantings. So it's true, I saw it. We have mammals. Seen this great little bunny one morning, such a treat. We have snakes. So this is a rough green snake. And actually today is World Snake Day. So this is a snake that we found hanging out in a fringe tree on that little spur from the East Side Trail to the Freedom Park path. So really cool snake, found throughout Mid-Atlantic in the Southeast, and it's probably our region's most arboreal snake. And it's non-venomous. And then on the BeltLine, we also have a special type of wildlife. We have people and we have lots of dogs. This is Nala. She's one of my favorite dogs on the BeltLine. And, you know, just all of these different interactions between so many different types of species make it really interesting. And it's certainly a unique system. So we have lots of birds of the BeltLine. I just wanted to include a short list of some of the birds that I personally have seen and heard. This isn't an exhausted list, but we see and hear a lot all along the BeltLine because it's really just providing great habitat for all of these birds. And probably my favorite on this list is wood thrush. It's a migratory bird. It's here in the summer and breeds in Georgia. And they have this really amazing song. And so a few times I've actually heard it on the west side singing out in the woods somewhere, and it's very, very magical. Okay, this is the only bird picture that I actually took, but this is a red-tailed hawk sitting on the gate at our Murphy's Crossing location. So she was hunting while I was eating lunch one day, and I got to watch her kind of fly around. She sat on our fence. So there's really good bird watching along the Beltline. Okay, time for more class participation. What kind of plants do you think attract wildlife? Put it in the chat. Is anyone answering, Michelle?
Not yet. Oh, flowers. Somebody answered flowers.
Flowers.
Tasty ones.
Flowers, yeah, for sure. Any more answers?
Trees.
Trees attract wildlife, certainly.
Trees with seeds and nuts.
Trees with seeds and nuts. I love it. We're getting more into this. Any more answers?
And fruits.
And fruits. Absolutely.
And dead trees.
Dead trees, yes. We're going to talk about dead trees.
And protective shrubbery for hiding.
Yeah, absolutely. Shrubs provided some really nice protection from predators. Awesome. Okay, so all different kinds of plants attract wildlife. So everyone who answered was right. So for example, we have tasty flowers with nice nectar that attract our common buckeye butterfly, also a plant, but this time I'm talking about this little kind of brown spotty butterfly that's feasting on the blazing star. This is in our trial garden on the west side near MLK. We also have purple coneflower that provides lots of seeds. So, you know, flowers don't just have nectar, they have seeds, they make fruits, and the goldfinches just love these coneflowers. And I don't know who said dead trees, but they should get an award because I love dead trees so much. And this was a really fantastic one that is kind of right off of Donnelly Avenue going onto the West Side Beltline. And, you know, I was walking by this snag and I saw a pair of red-headed woodpeckers who, you know, came in and started flying around, and they were foraging, and it looked like they may have had a nest there earlier in the season. And it really was just a wonderful sight. So dead trees provide really important resources for birds, for insects, for all kinds of animals. They're important for decomposition. And, you know, if you have a dead tree that's not in a place where it's going to threaten public health, where it might fall into a trail, I really would encourage you to leave it there as long as it's safe to do so. And actually in Georgia, we have over 30 species of birds that nest in cavities. So snags are just really great. And for me, you know, whenever I see one, it's not an eyesore, it's such a treat because I know I'm about to see all kinds of great woodpeckers hanging out. And we also, leaves are a really important source of food, especially to insects. And insects really, they're really kind of at the heart of the food web because without them, we don't have anything else. They're the food of our food. So I want to pause for a second for questions. Has there been any questions in the chat, Michelle, or does anyone have any questions now?
I don't see any questions right now, but feel free to type any questions in the chat and the Q&A.
Okay. We'll give you a second. And again, all of these photos were taken on the West Side Beltline on my phone. Any questions or should I keep going?
You can keep going. Yeah. Oh, right now there's one. I know you all log trees. Do you log the dead trees too?
Yes, we also love dead trees because they provide a lot of great resources to wildlife. And so again, if there's a dead tree that's right next to your house, if it's right next to a path, you know, that's definitely something that we want to deal with because we don't want anyone to get hurt. But certainly, you know, we do a lot of ecological restoration work. And in those areas, when it's a dead tree that's out in the forest, it's not going to hurt anyone, you know, we really want to leave that.
Yeah, I think not, I'm not sure if I think she meant like logging trees.
Oh.
If we log dead trees, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Michelle. I thought
No
you,
problem.
I thought you said, do we love dead trees? I'm just so enamored by them. You know, so an arborist will deal with that. We have some arborists on staff, and like if there is a dead tree in an area that we maintain, you know, we'll deal with it and make sure that it's safe. That's definitely our priority.
Yeah, and then there's another question as well. How does your organization promotes the habitats around the Beltline?
So if you walk on the Beltline, one of the ways we do it is we have a lot of signs all around the Beltline that say what's happening or what's blooming, because the way that we have landscaped the Beltline is very natural. And so it doesn't look like a manicured lawn. And, you know, we definitely run into a number of people who ask us, you know, when are you going to mow this grass? And we say, well, you know, we mow it once a year, but this is what it's supposed to look like. And so we do have a lot of tall grasses. We have a lot of meadow spaces that are much more wild than, you know, a very neatly manicured lawn would be. And so it's really important that we want people to know why we're landscaping like that. We want people to know what's blooming. We want them to know how it helps wildlife, and, you know, that these places are really loved and cared for, and that we spend a lot of time in the field taking care of them. So that's definitely one of the biggest ways is interpretive signage on the Beltline, and they get changed out seasonally. Okay, any more questions right now?
No, that's right. I think we educate definitely in the Beltline, but also educating on programs like this one, right?
Yeah, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So no more questions right now.
Okay. Okay, and so now that you know what kind of habitat we have on the Beltline and what kind of wildlife we're providing habitat for there, you know, it's really easy to do this at home, and you should do this at home. And I want to give you some insight into how to do that. Can we do like a hand raise thing of how many people are gardeners? Is that can I?
I see a few
Okay.
hands raising. Yeah, four.
Okay.
For almost everybody. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Excellent. Pay close attention. Yeah. So people who garden really have a very special role in providing habitat for wildlife, just because so much of our land is privately owned. And so if everybody, you know, creates a little bit of habitat at home, we have a lot of habitat. So even a small act of just, you know, putting a few native shrubs in your yard, if everyone does that, it makes a difference. Okay, so just some very basic kind of key landscape elements that you want to think about is you want to get as many different kinds of things in there as you can. And so for our living elements, you know, that's just different shapes and sizes of plants. And then for our abiotic or non-living elements, those are things like a water source or a nest box or leaving your leaf litter or leaving a little bit of bare ground for our many ground nesting bees. And if you do, I do recommend a water source, but if it's a bird bath, you definitely want to get some sort of little bubbler in there to keep the water moving so you don't breed mosquitoes. Please don't breed mosquitoes. Okay. And the reason that we want so many different elements is because of this. And this slide is bird focused because I borrowed it from my friends at Atlanta Audubon Society. But it really, it works for every kind of animal. So if you have a little strip of backyard, if you have a container garden and, you know, all you have room for is some black-eyed Susans and some purple coneflower, that's great. You're providing resources. You're providing resources to some pollinators. You're providing resources to some of the seed-eating birds, some of the other insects. But, you know, if you have a little more space, as soon as you add some shrubs, I know somebody mentioned earlier that shrubs provide shelter and they provide a good hiding place. So now you've added a whole new group of animals that want to come to your yard because you have more resources. And so this is called functional diversity, when we have lots of different shapes and sizes of plants. And basically the more functional diversity you have in your yard, the more biodiversity you're going to have. So another really important caveat of this is that we really want to focus very heavily on native plants, just like this black-throated blue warbler is thinking. So, you know, I would think that a lot of you are probably familiar with what native plants are, but I just want to go through it really quickly for anyone who isn't. So a native plant is just a species that has historically occurred, you know, in a specific region, in a specific ecosystem. And that's important because native plants co-evolve alongside the other members of that ecosystem, and they form really intricate relationships. We're going to dig a little deeper into that in just a second. And then invasive plants, you know, we've all seen this picture. Everyone in Georgia has seen this, you know, kudzu taking over an entire like city, English ivy growing up all of the trees. So an invasive plant is non-native. And whenever I say invasive, I'm never going to be talking about an aggressive native plant. To me, an invasive plant is always not native. And so, you know, intrinsically, there's nothing wrong with non-native plants. It's more about how they act in the ecosystem, because they can cause economic harm, they can cause environmental harm, they can harm human health. And so basically they just grow, they get out of control, and they reduce diversity. So let's dig a little deeper into that. This is my favorite slide. If you have, if you've attended any of my other Trees Atlanta talks, you've seen this slide, and I could give the whole talk on it. So let's compare two kind of superficially similar species. We have our native Virginia creeper, and we have our English ivy. So on the surface, very similar. Both vines, both have nice fleshy fruits. They both, they grow in similar habitats. They're both pretty aggressive, but let's dig into some of the big differences. And so I want to hear on the chat if you can think of some major differences between Virginia creeper and English ivy. Yeah. Do we have any thoughts? Anything in the chat, Michelle?
All right, so we got one question, one person that would like to know because they don't know, but another person who's asking, does English ivy breed mosquitoes?
Does English ivy breed mosquitoes?
Yeah.
So English ivy, it has kind of those little cuppy shaped leaves, and it's really good at collecting water. And it also grows really dense, which also makes it good at collecting water. So one reason to get rid of English ivy is that it definitely can provide places for mosquitoes to breed, for sure. Any other questions or comments, Michelle?
Not for now.
Okay, all right, so let's dig into this. So Virginia creeper, deciduous, English ivy, evergreen. So Virginia creeper is very aggressive, admittedly. It definitely is, but it's gonna die back in the winter. So no matter how much it takes over in the summer, which I don't know, I don't think it's that bad. I like Virginia creeper. I'm sure some of you have like your mouths open in horror right now, but that's okay. But it's gonna die back in the winter. The English ivy is gonna keep growing all year round. And it's really not it's not a coincidence that most of our invasive plants here in Georgia are evergreen, because we don't have that many native evergreen plants. We have a few, but most of, we want evergreen plants. They're pretty. We like them to be green all year round. I get that, but it gives them an edge. And so we have made many landscaping choices of non-native plants that are evergreen, and they continue to grow, and they tend to beat out our natives because of that. Do you have a question, Michelle? I saw you unmuted.
We have a comment that English ivy could prevent erosion from heavy rain.
Yeah, it certainly can. It definitely can. If you have a hillside full of English ivy, I don't recommend going out and like ripping all of it out unless you're prepared to plant something new in its place immediately. It certainly does that. Yeah, I don't disagree. It can definitely prevent erosion, but lots of other native plants can too. There's actually a great little shrub called New Jersey tea, and it's got a really, really deep taproot. And so it's supposed to be very, very good at kind of holding things in. Yeah. So another difference between Virginia creeper and English ivy is it's kind of a bird focused difference, but they fruit at different times. So a lot of people tend to be surprised when I tell them that English ivy has fruits, but they'll only fruit when they get high enough in the canopy, kind of like a grape. They need to have enough sun, and which is another reason to keep them off your trees. So the Virginia creeper fruits kind of late fall, and it coincides with the time that birds are actually migrating back to Central and South America. And they have this insane journey. They fly across the Gulf of Mexico. There's nowhere to stop. There's nothing to eat. So before they do it, they basically have to get really fat. They just gotta eat a bunch of fruit. They'll switch from insects to fruit in the fall to get ready for that journey. And plants like Virginia creeper and beautyberry and hearts of bursting are so important for these birds that are migrating, because they're fruiting at the time when the birds really need them. And English ivy doesn't do that, doesn't help. Also, the fruits, there's some really interesting research being done on this in upstate New York, in Rochester. So on the whole, non-native fruits are less nutritious to our birds than native fruits are. But the biggest and most important difference, I think, between English ivy and Virginia creeper is what can eat their leaves. So all plants have a whole cocktail of chemical defenses because they don't want to get eaten. And we're more familiar with these than we think. So, you know, I'm sure many of you drank coffee this morning. I did, probably not enough. But caffeine is a plant chemical defense compound. It's to stop insects from eating it. So is nicotine. So is theobromine, which is in chocolate. It's my favorite chemical defense compound. But insects that evolve with these plants, you know, they can learn to withstand these chemical defenses. But for our English ivy, you know, no insects can really eat them. Sometimes a few really generalist insects can eat non-native species, but, you know, on the whole, insects just can't really eat the leaves of non-native species. And as a gardener, on the surface, that might sound really good to you, like, oh, a pest-free plant, I love that. But really, when you think deeper about it, first of all, you don't have any insects that are checking the populations of these non-native plants. And then if you don't have any insects, you're not going to have any other wildlife because there's not going to be anything for them to eat. You know, certainly they can eat the seeds, they can eat some berries, but especially for birds in the breeding season, 90% of birds feed their babies insects. So it's a really important food source. And, you know, native plants are the ones that attract insects. And if you have a good diversity of plants in your yard, you'll have a good diversity of wildlife. And, you know, a few leaves might get nibbled. That's okay. They're not going to decimate your plants. Okay, so another note about why it's important to plant in your yard is because it provides habitat connectivity. So if you take a scene like this where, you know, there are few green spaces spaced far apart, and maybe you have a goldfinch and the goldfinch wants to find a mate, or you know, it's the area where the goldfinch was living was recently developed, which happens here in Atlanta. And he's got to go find a mate somewhere else, or he's got to go find a new habitat. How is he going to move between these green spaces if there's, you know, no resources? So here's a real life picture of this. Centennial Olympic Park is an habitat island. And actually during migration, if you can't tell, I'm a bird watcher, but during migration, we get a lot of really rare birds showing up in Centennial Park because they fly over downtown and they don't see anything except that one green patch. So if we don't have anything planted, you know, between these big patches, between our big parks, between, you know, our forests, then we have no habitat connectivity and our animals can't move. You know, birds are more mobile than most, but our frogs and our snakes and our mammals, they need habitat connectivity. So if we change this to this, now we are talking. Okay, so before we talk about what you should plant, I want to pause for questions again. Has anything come up in the chat, Michelle?
Not right now. I'm going to be sharing a resource that somebody just sent me, but no questions so far.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna give you a general list of recommendations, but what I will say about planting is that, you know, if you're planting native plants, there is something for everyone. And I would focus more on putting the right plant in the right place than like, what should I plant? So if you have a sunny, dry yard, focus on meadow species, focus on plants that, you know, like to be hot and dry and suffer a little bit, like some of our black-eyed Susans and the Coreopsis, and, you know, maybe some native prairie grasses even. And if you have kind of a shady, wet backyard, just go to your closest wetlands. Look at the plants that you find there and focus on those. Joe Pieweed is a really great one for a little bit shadier, wet spots, and they can get a little tall, but I know that there's a little bit of a shorter version that could work. Sweet Spire is another great one that likes wet places. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself, but right plant, right place. That's the most important thing, and it's gonna make the least work for you. Okay, so we're gonna start with canopy trees. So some of the trees that we have in the BeltLine, we have lots of oaks, we have lots of tulip poplars, we've planted a bunch of persimmons, a number of basswood. Those are also sometimes called American linden. I like basswood, that's what I call it. But oaks are a really, really great one because they're a fantastic shade tree. We know how hot it is in Atlanta. You know, we know that the heat island effect is getting worse and that trees can help with that. But oaks also host the most number of butterfly and moth species. And again, that's really important because those caterpillars are a really good source of food for everyone else, in addition to butterflies and moths being beautiful and really important pollinators. So I won't tell you to plant a sweet gum. I always get some dirty looks when I mention sweet gums, but my plug for sweet gum is that if you have it, you know, growing already, please leave it. It's a great tree. Wildlife loves it. You know, tons of birds will come to it in the winter. It's a really good source of seeds. And I did hear a tip once that you can collect the gumballs and put them around your other plantings as a barrier to bunnies, and that apparently works very well. So now you have a use for all of those gumballs that you are tripping all over all the time. So, and then we've got the shorter trees. So there are just so many really good choices. At Trees Atlanta, you know, we plant a lot of red buds, a lot of sweet bay magnolias. There's a huge section of serviceberries on the west side BeltLine. We also have a lot of pawpaws on the west side BeltLine. We've got a section of that. We have a ton of black gums that I think they just have the most amazing fall color, and I like their honey. Wax myrtle's a really, really great one. And so all of these trees are, they're pretty compact, they're pretty well behaved with the exception of mulberries and I guess black cherries. But I don't know, if you ever want to see a million birds in one tree, I would plant a mulberry or a black cherry. But smoke trees also really stunning. There are actually a bunch of them planted as street trees in my neighborhood. And you know, these are shorter trees that will work for most backyards. And so they're a good option. And as long as we're talking about trees and yards, I want to really quickly plug our Neighborwoods program. And with the Neighborwoods program, you can actually get a free tree in your front yard. So if you're interested in that, please go to our website to learn more, because we like to plant trees. Okay, shrubs. Beautyberry. Beautyberry is an amazing shrub. So this is This is the one in the top left corner with this gray catbird on it. But they have these amazing magenta fruits. We've got them planted all over the west side BeltLine. They're just incredible. Viburnums are also a really amazing bush. They're pretty compact. There are lots of different species, but the research that I mentioned earlier about which fruits are the most nutritious for native birds, this researcher actually found that viburnums have the most nutritious fruits. So something to think about, but really, really attractive. They have pretty good fall color. We have 1 million species of native azaleas too. And we've got a bunch of azaleas planted on the spur trail from the east side BeltLine to Freedom Parkway. They're amazing. We also have some planted in a spot called Holderness Woods on the west side BeltLine, and they're all starting to flower, and it's just a rainbow of azaleas. It's pretty spectacular. And then hollies are really great too. You know, we have many evergreen hollies. They our winterberry holly keeps its fruit throughout the winter, and they're just really beautiful, have 4-season interest, great landscaping plant, great wildlife plant. Okay, on to wildflowers. I think that black-eyed Susans are one of the quintessential wildflowers to plant. They're just bright and beautiful, and so you see that in the bottom right corner of the screen, there's a black-eyed Susan with a little native leafcutter bee sampling from it. So, you know, there are lots of different kinds of black-eyed Susan, and there's probably one that will work in your yard. Goldenrod is a really great one if you're trying to attract bees, though. Goldenrod is our species that that hosts the most bees. So, you know, if you're trying to really create habitat for bees, that's definitely a great one to add. Milkweed's really, really important in the top left picture. That's a monarch caterpillar on a milkweed. And so, you know, monarch caterpillars can only eat milkweeds. And then mountain mint, we have a ton of planted, and that's a really easy one to grow. You know, wildflowers are generally pretty easy. Everyone can grow wildflowers. And then I always like to talk about ground covers because I think that those get kind of forgotten. And I want to make a plug for green and gold because it's absolutely beautiful, and I love it so much that I actually have 2 pictures of it. So these, oh, you can see my cursor. Okay, so this is green and gold growing in between these rocks. This is in the Stumpery Garden that's on the East Side Extension Trail, and then this is more green and gold, so you can see it kind of flowering. But the leaves will stay green pretty much all year round. Really nice ground cover, really pretty. Lots of other good ones too, though. Foam flower, I think, looks really nice. Ferns can work well. And we have a lot of clover on the west side BeltLine, and that can definitely work nicely as in alternative lawn, even though it's not native. Vines are also really important. I put Virginia creeper on there, which I know none of you are going to go home and plant, but it's more of a plea not to pull it. But we have this amazing passion flower with this incredible flower. It's an aggressive vine, but it's so pretty, and this carpenter bee is just like drowning in pollen in here. It's also a host of the Gulf fritillary butterfly, and it also has really delicious edible fruits, so very nice. Coral honeysuckle is another really good one to attract pollinators, and especially ruby-throated hummingbirds. And it's just, I mean, the flowers look absolutely amazing when they bloom. That's a great one. That's a great like mailbox planting. Okay. And so I also wanted to mention some of our plants of concern in the Piedmont. You know, you're probably familiar with some of these. Some of you may have them growing in your own lawn. If you do, you're not a bad person. It's okay. Just be careful and make sure that you keep them controlled. And then I just want to, I want to finish off with my like kind of top 5 oh no-nos. So these are plants that I would implore you to please not plant. And again, if they're already in your yard, don't have to pull them. You're not a bad person. It's okay if you like them. I get it. They're pretty. That's why we plant them. But they are really, really harmful to the ecosystem. So I just wanted to mention. So we have English ivy, which we all know. And so if you're thinking of planting English ivy, perhaps choose green and gold instead. Bamboo is, you know, I guess I can't deny its aesthetic appeal, but it's just very invasive and it's also really hard to get rid of. It really takes over. But good news is that we have a native bamboo. It's called river cane. And then Nandina is, it's also called sacred bamboo. Pretty plant. It has nice fall color, but unfortunately, its berries are actually really poisonous to birds, and especially cedar waxwings. So if you already have a Nandina, what I really recommend that you do is just when it starts to fruit, cut the clusters off, and they look really nice in wreaths or in floral arrangements, and they stick around for a long time. So you can still enjoy the fall color, you know, without hurting the birds. Or you could plant a sweet spire instead. The sweet spires also have really amazing fall color. They look really nice. And then privet for hedges. You could do a Yopon holly. Look, you can still have a hedge. Mahonia is another one that I really, really would ask you not to plant, mostly because it's spiky and I don't like pulling it. So if you want a spiky evergreen plant, all you have to do is plant an American holly. Hollies are great. I recommend hollies. Okay. So that's all I have for you. Did I? Yeah. Okay. This is a gratuitous picture of a praying mantis that I found on the BeltLine while I was weeding. I just couldn't fit it into another slide, but I thought it was really cool, and I thought that everyone should also get to see a praying mantis. So